Joining us here live, legal analyst Chris Tritico and terrorism expert Jeff Attica. Chris, Jeff, thanks so much for taking the time this morning. We sure appreciate it.
Absolutely. Pleasure to do it.
Chris, let me begin with you. A federal judge decides that now Iran, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda are responsible. There's a default judgment finding that they are responsible for the September 11 terrorist attacks to the tune of about $100 billion. Nobody's going to collect any money from this, are they?
Well, it's a pretty difficult process, I would imagine, to collect money from the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. You know, I don't know if the United States government has seized any of their assets. Iran, a little bit different. I think that we probably have assets of the Iranian government that we've seized. The seizure of foreign government money is going to be handled by federal law and international treaties. I'm guessing that this is a great judgment for the lawyers to have gotten, and it's a good symbolic thing. I don't see a lot of money flowing into any plaintiff's hands at the end of the day here.
Then, Mr. Attica, was it worth even doing? Does it send a bit of false hope to some of those families that lost loved ones in 9/11 or that have been affected by the 9/11 attacks?
Well, no, not really. I mean, this is really a new legal maneuver that's being used, or tool that we've applied here domestically. And the biggest problem, of course, is domesticating the judgment, getting other countries to recognize our judgment, because the assets in this country are limited. Iran has been sued in the past for other terrorist incidents. There has been some recovery, but as my colleague indicated, the devil is in trying to get the money, and most countries around the world will not recognize our judgments as valid, and therefore we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. But it is a beginning. The international community really needs to come together to make this an international matter, that if a judgment is rendered against a state sponsor of terrorism, that judgment can be collected anywhere in the world.
Now, Chris, just getting back to you as a legal expert, would there be attorneys that could actually go to court over this and I guess sue Iran or the Taliban or Al-Qaeda in absentia and actually have a judgment for a particular amount of money for a particular plaintiff?
Well, I mean, that's what we have, and the problem is not getting the judgment, because in the United States, if you file a lawsuit, then you're gonna press forward and get your judgment unless you something else happens. So you've got this huge judgment. The real legal hurdle is getting, as he just said, is getting someone to recognize that where you can collect. And the government of Iran or Pakistan or Afghanistan are never going to recognize this and allow the United States to come in and seize assets in their foreign country and their country to satisfy United States judgment. It's just going to be almost impossible to happen.
All right, gentlemen, if you'd hang on real quick. And Mr. Attica, when we come back, Jeff, I want to ask you why Saudi Arabia isn't mentioned with Iran, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda as being liable for 9/11. Federal judge signed a default judgment finding Iran, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda liable in the September 11th terrorist attacks. About $100 billion in liability. And I've got with me legal expert Chris Tritico and terrorism expert Jeff Attica. And Jeff, let me ask you this question: why isn't Saudi Arabia in the group here, along with Iran, the Taliban, and Al Qaeda?
Well, if you read the 9/11 Commission report, there are some links to Saudi Arabia. The majority of the hijackers on 9/11, the terrorists, were Saudi Arabians. But of course, Al Qaeda has members from about 60 different countries, including the United States. But the bottom line is you've got to show a direct link to the sponsor that is engaging in this terrorism. And so I suppose the attorneys for the plaintiffs felt that the strongest links obviously were against Iran, which is the puppet master for all terrorism throughout the world these days. And so they stuck with that. But, of course, the best way to win a judgment is a default judgment. That means the other side doesn't show up and you win. But I think it's probably the link that they couldn't quite connect the dots to show direct culpability.
All right, but I mean, Osama bin Laden, Jeff, just staying with you for a second, Osama bin Laden is a Saudi national, correct?
Well, that's true, but as I said, we have members of Al-Qaeda that are U.S. citizens. That doesn't mean that the United States is sponsoring terrorism. It just means that these folks are from this country or from that country, and that's not enough to draw culpability towards the nation state.
All right, very good. And Chris Tritico, our legal analyst, will we see some people actually going into court, do you think, to try and get some of this money? And should we begin to go into some of the assets that we have frozen here in the United States from Iran and to grab those?
Well, that's going to be the next move. They're going to try whatever Iranian money the United States government has seized, they're going to try to get their hands on. But as I said, though, when you seize a foreign country's assets, it's not like just grabbing some individual's bank account. That's going to be handled by international law and international treaties. And so it's not like you can just go and get it. And seize it like it is any other judgment. It's a very difficult process. To get any of this money, I'm guessing this is going to take 10, 15 years to get that money that the United States is holding from Iran.
All right, very good. Legal analyst Chris Tritico, Terrorism expert Jeff Attica, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here this morning.